Welcome to the Rough Characters podcast. I am Philip Overby.
And I'm John Palladino.
Today is a very special episode that's going to delve into the past, the deep past of our childhoods, and the recent past of our early adulthood. and
One might say it was a long time ago.
I don't know. Long time. Yeah, galaxy far away. Yeah. We're going to be talking about I guess it's known now as the Skywalker saga, the 9 movies that make up the story of the Skywalker family. We're going to be talking about our least favorite to most favorite. So there's going to be some overlap here. I'm pretty sure we're not going to like most of the same movies because we have very differing tastes, and some of them might be uh, you might strongly disagree with, or you might strongly agree with. We don't know. We're just going to talk about the ones we like, and you have to keep in mind I'm slightly older than John, so we always notice that Star Wars fans tend to see things through a maybe rose-colored lenses sometimes when they think back nostalgically about things from the past. So we don't know if that's true or not, but we're going to talk about least favorite to most favorite. So let's go ahead and get into it. Uh, I'm going to start with my least favorite, my number 9, which is Attack of the Clones, Episode 2.
Oh my God.
And the reason for this is I just really don't remember anything from it. Like when I was thinking back, like what happened in Attack of the Clones, and I guess Anakin got the little braid, and he was kind of doing something with Padme. And there's the infamous scene where he says, "I don't like sand." And like that. That's all I really remember from that one. I mean, it just wasn't a memorable movie for me, I guess. They go to some planet and there's these long neck aliens. I think that's episode 2. I could be wrong, but I don't really have much to say about that one. It's just the least memorable of all the movies to me, and just didn't didn't stand out to me in any way. And that could be just because I think I've only watched that one once. That was like
Oh
a
wow. Okay.
that was like a one watch, and it's like, all right, I got it. I don't think I ever went back and watched it a second time or third time.
Yeah. So my opinions are from someone who grew up as like a super avid Star Wars fan. So like I rewatched the first six movies a hell of a lot. Just so much I rewatched them. Uh, the sequel trilogy came out when I was, more of an adult. Uh, but I have rewatched the first six many, many times, and it was just a couple years ago, maybe. I did like a full rewatch. I think it was right before the Rise of Skywalker came out in theaters. Because what happened was I was I was watching all of the movies with my mom. I don't remember why, because she'd never really been a Star Wars fan, and I was trying to get her into it, and we had a bunch of spare time. So I have a pretty good memory of the movies now. And but I think you were right that Attack of the Clones does have a lot of like forgetfulness to it. Um, I did not rank it last. My last movie is The Rise of Skywalker, which I almost walked out of theaters when I was watching that movie. And I actually went to The Rise of Skywalker with this girl I used to work with. She was like the only Star Wars fan because I usually went with my brother, but he when that movie came out, he lived in Georgia, so I was alone. And she was a Star Wars fan and she didn't have anyone to go with, and we're like, let's just go together, and we're pretty stoked about it. And the entire movie, we just kept looking at each other and being like, "What the fuck is this trash?" I
Well,
mean,
well,
seriously.
it's interesting because this bleeds over to my number 8, which is the same movie, Rise of
Oh,
Skywalker.
oh, okay, perfect.
So it's pretty low on my list too. And I remember the same feeling. You know, I watched it with my wife, and there are a couple of times stuff happened. I just kind of looked over at her, and she doesn't have any invested interest in
Yeah.
Star Wars at all. But I
And
was just
after
like,
that, she probably doesn't have any. And who could blame her? Because that movie is crap.
and it's one of those things when you go and you pay a lot of money to go watch a movie and you're pretty excited for it. You try to rationalize stuff a little bit, but like like, well, that part would, da, 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 da. But yeah, I remember just like, why did they do that? And like,
Uh,
I think one of the biggest things in that movie that pissed me off was when they killed Chewbacca. Apparently, was
oh
that
my
it?
God.
It was that one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the list of things that they fucked up in this movie are insane, but the big major ones for me was the fake Chewbacca death.
Mm.
It was the fake C-3PO mind wipe. It was
Oh yeah.
Palpatine being randomly resurrected off screen for no reason other than to be like, hey, here's a character that and they did nothing that made sense with him. The whole story was stupid. Uh, and maybe the worst part of the entire movie is basically all the new Force shit, handing items across the galaxy to each other. Um, what? No, just I could not with all the stuff that happened there. It was so stupid.
that that would be cool though if you could
Oh,
just
and Kylo Ren
so,
turning good. Like, what the fuck? Just, I don't know. It was all trash. And the movie is it's even worse. It's even worse than what I'm saying because it came out after The Last Jedi, which everyone fucking hated. Not everyone, but a lot of Star Wars fans thought that movie was crap, and they came out and said, "Hey, we're gonna fix it." This was fixed. I don't know what the hell they had planned for that movie before they had all the backlash of The Last Jedi. And The Last Jedi is my number 8, by the way. So it
mm.
kind of continues this conversation that eh, I think that I was more angry when I saw The Last Jedi because that was the movie that really like came out of left field and just like ruined so much for me. I was like, this movie is so bad and stupid and boring and so many dumb like that had the part where well, first of all of Luke Skywalker just didn't make any sense in that movie. And then secondly, they also had that part where Finn was going to like sacrifice himself and Rose like crashes into him with her ship and knocks him off course and the whole thing was ridiculous. But mostly it was like the whole Luke Skywalker storyline like didn't make sense. And I know a lot of people that are big Star Wars fans are huge Luke fans. I've never been a big Luke fan, so like it didn't bother me that they butchered his character that much. It was just like it didn't make sense as someone who didn't even really like Luke that much. I know that's kind of blasphemy for Star Wars fans, but
Well, I'm in the same camp. I'm not. I was never like a huge Luke Skywalker person. I was more of just like the world or the universe was really
yeah,
interesting, and the character. I liked a lot of the characters and how they. It was more like an ensemble thing for me. There wasn't like a particular character. I was just like, oh, this is my character. I just liked, the group of people. They worked well together. Like a lot of them. And the thing with the Last Jedi is, I think I kind of feel like if they would have just left alone Luke, and I think that's the whole problem with the Skywalker saga. Anyway, they should have just left the Luke Skywalker shit alone after Return of the Jedi. Like, okay, Luke exists somewhere. Maybe he has a cameo, like a fucking Mandalorian cameo or whatever. Hey, I'm here and I saved the day or something. But
yeah.
but just the whole thing, I think, people were just not happy with. Um, but yeah, I didn't care that much about fucking up Luke. I was like, all right, whatever.
I don't understand the obsession of staying in the same era. You have all this like history and all this time and so many characters that you could like do new stories with, but we keep going back to characters that were in the like original six movies, and it's like why?
Well, this is kind of a different discussion, but I think we both kind of talked about this. I think it would be really cool if they just did like, if somebody planned a new trilogy and it was just like fucking, I don't know where,
Yeah,
just
Joe Smith
somewhere.
on a new planet or some shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoever, like, make new characters, make new, I mean, you got all these races you can do stuff with. I mean, we kind of saw that in the Mandalorian a bit. I mean, they did some callback stuff in the Mandalorian, but for the most part, it felt like a new world, and I think that's why people loved it so much. It felt familiar, but it felt different. Also, the vibe kind of felt different. So, I think that's kind of the direction people hope Star Wars goes in. I think a lot of people are like, "All right, Skywalker stuff's finished. Let's make some new stories now." And
Yeah.
I think they tried to kind of do that with the new trilogy, the sequel trilogy, where they maybe wanted to plant seeds for these new characters that would go on and do stuff. But
But here's the problem, Phil.
I think it's too late.
There wasn't a
No,
single interesting new character. Like
yeah, Kylo Ren to me was the only really interesting new character.
Kylo Ren was interesting until they did the oh no he's a good thing. Snoke was interesting, but they offed him way too early for no reason. Captain Phasma, I thought she was sort of interesting, but again, they didn't really do anything with her. And then I always thought in The Force Awakens, I thought that Finn was like super interesting. And then another big problem with the last two movies of that trilogy is that his entire purpose was to follow the group and scream Rey's name. That was all he did. He never did anything other than Ray. And it's like, are you kidding me? Like what? And then there's that whole like casino planet storyline.
Mm.
Uh, and Admiral Purple Hair. I think her name's Admiral Holdo. I don't know, but that was all stupid. Just so many things were stupid. And I didn't actually have a problem with like the purple hair. It was just the character was ridiculous.
Well, we'll get into Last Jedi more later because it's further up my list.
I don't see how it's higher than second to last, but
my my number 7 is episode 1, Phantom Menace.
okay.
Um, I think a lot of this has to do with again, super high expectations. I saw the trailer. I was fucking hyped. Yeah. Oh hell yeah. Look at this shit. They're gonna fight this dude with the double bladed lightsaber. He looks cool as fuck. And like, he doing flips and oh cool. We're gonna see Anakin when he's a kid. So the problem, and I think this is a sad thing just in general, child actors that they get kind of typecast. And if you ever watch like Jake Lloyd interviews, he looks really like just jaded about the whole Star Wars thing, and like
Yeah, like ruined his life. Yeah.
yeah. And I can totally understand. Like I would be the same way because I think a lot of people pin the perceived failures of the relaunch of Star Wars to this big new thing for a new generation on him. Um, because I think episode 1 was successful in a lot of ways, but um, I think what it failed to do was to rekindle the love of uh, Star Wars for older fans. I think it introduced Star Wars to a lot of younger fans, which probably would be like around your age range or a little bit younger. Um, for
Yeah,
me,
I think a little bit younger because I did grow up on the original trilogy and I did have quite a few friends that watched the original trilogy.
Well, I just know people that are much younger than me, and they like the prequels a lot more than I do. And, and
I think I like them more than you do.
I think it's an age thing, and I think it's yeah, it's like, for example, when you're a kid and you watch a Disney movie for the first time, and like it makes that impact on you at that age, and then you go back and watch it as an adult, and you're like, ugh, fucking sucks. It's kind of the same thing, maybe, but like when I think Phantom Menace came out in 1999, so it was like my last year of high school, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, the theater was packed, everybody was hyped, and da 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 da. And then yeah, just so many like things I just didn't like about it, and um like none of the new characters were that interesting to me, and the pod racing stuff was kind of cool, I guess, but
It's
yeah.
interesting hearing all the reasons you don't like the Phantom Menace because a lot of them are reasons I do like the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, it's I think I think the only reason I do like the Phantom Menace is or it's a little bit higher on my list than last is because the other two are just
So bad.
so bad. Yeah. This
Yeah,
in the past this would have been my lowest one just because of the
yeah,
expectation. It was an
right.
expectation thing for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna hold back my thoughts on the Phantom Menace for now. And and then give them to you later. But I'm assuming Jar Jar Binks is also a big negative.
You know, I never hated him as much as everyone else did. I mean, I understood what he was there for.
Okay. I have as even as a kid, I always hated Jar Jar Binks, but I never hated him to the like vitriolic like hate that a lot of the fandom does. Where again, the actor's life was kind of like ruined. Uh which is ridiculous by the way. I don't like understand why the actor gets the flack because he didn't write the character and obviously he was the right role for the character. No one can say that Jar Jar Binks's like performance is not spectacular for like the goal, right? The goal was definitely being annoying and like high pitched and stupid. And I mean, the guy did it. And I would actually argue, and I know that another hot topic is Anakin's acting that you kind of brought out. I never, he had some annoying lines, but he's a 9-year-old kid. He
Yeah.
did not bother me. I thought he was great for what he was supposed to be as a kid. I
He
just
did,
never really liked him. I found him to be whiny and annoying. I think he was supposed to be a little whiny and annoying. Um,
well, he didn't bother me so much as the fact that he's Darth Vader. And it's kind of like
yeah.
you don't want to see how the sausage is made. And I think that's the whole problem with the
Oh,
prequel
see,
trilogy.
see, that is where we definitely disagree because I loved seeing that where he came from, where he goes. Uh,
But that's to me that's too early. I think maybe like from Revenge of the Sith, or maybe a little bit, or maybe from Attack of the Clones when he's kind of like a little bit older, and you start to see, okay, he has some darkness to him. I think having him as a kid was just kind of like, is that really necessary to see him as a
I think it
kid?
was very important personally. I think showing how he grew up, showing his mom and that they were slaves and I think it gives part of the answers later, like some of how the Jedi Council do things. The fact that they like took Anakin away, but they had all the power in the world to like free his mom basically and never cared to. It just kind of shows the Jedi Council and the Jedi from like an outsider's point of view part, and that's like he's old enough to understand this stuff, and then he gets into the Jedi Council, into the training with this knowledge of like really no one ever helped my
Well,
mom, and then she dies like a slave still.
I mean, this may just be me forgetting what happens in the movie, but I don't like if Anakin was portrayed like a kid that was learning these things and not like a carefree like pod racer. Woohoo! If he
Now
was
this is pod racing.
yeah, like if he was portrayed like more cynical or like he came from this like dark background and like as a slave and like he doesn't trust anybody and then like kids can be that way. Kids don't have to be like happy and hey, I'm an inventor and look, I made this and da, 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 da. It's like if you want to, you could have just started with him as like this kind of scarred, emotionally scarred kid, and then kind of led into him like going out of that and trying to be a good person despite his background. But
True,
then,
but I think that the point was that he was happy in the beginning, some not happy because of the situation, but happy in spite of it. And then all these things start to happen that really start to like change that. Like the fact that he's taken away from his mom, the fact that his mom then dies a slave, the fact that the Jedi's codes seem very hypocritical. Uh and so it like slowly breaks him down. And I personally really like that, but I understand that a lot of people are like it ruins Darth Vader, and I'm like it makes him Darth Vader. But I think it is probably the like older and younger thing. Maybe.
yeah.
I'm not sure.
So what's your rank 7?
All right, hot topic number one. This is gonna be the world's worst hot take, probably, and I don't care. My number seven is New Hope.
Mm.
I have rewatched, like I said, I rewatched all these movies somewhat recently. And dear God, A New Hope is so boring. It's so dated. And it's just the world's most like cliched storyline ever. And it's just, I watched a lot as a kid. I loved it as a kid. I remember. But my God, it's so boring now. I know that's like not good to say, but it's just not interesting to me. I don't know. There's not much I like about A New Hope.
Well, it's kind of like you have the beginning of a story that you've seen so many times, and it's a familiar story that it's kind of like if you hear a joke from a comedian from the 1950s, but people have been doing a rendition of that joke for like 50 years since. You go back and watch the original joke and you're like, oh, that's where that joke came from.
Right.
So for me, like A New Hope is like if you didn't have that one uh to build off of, like it's like a foundation for everything. So without
Well, and for its time, it was this very like in trope to the hero's journey.
yeah, so to me, like it's kind of like the if you had something like The Hobbit or you had something like the first Harry Potter book, it's like those kind of things that just like those stand out because they're the first of that series. And, you know, just in general, people are going to rewatch or reread the first of anything because
Right.
it's the first. So it just has more of an impact on what comes after it. I mean, everything that happens in Star Wars goes back to A New Hope in some way or another. Um, the origins of pretty much everything. So, even if it's perceived to be predictable, or not much happens or something like that. It's still laying the groundwork for this universe, which is pretty impressive, I think, to make a movie that people for years and years and years have uh, longed for it to be expanded even further. And that, since that was the genesis, it's kind of like, um, yeah, it's much higher ranked for me.
Yeah, I can't rank it high because it's the start. I appreciate why maybe you would, but I don't care. Um, you have like 3 minutes of Darth Vader screen time throughout the entire movie. You have the world's worst lightsaber fight ever. You have, I don't know. It's just introducing the characters in the world, and the first time you see it, it's amazing. The first couple, I mean, when I was a kid, I loved it because it's like, oh, now we're going to the cantina and look at all these like cool aliens, and now we're doing this, and it was really cool because the world was really cool. The story, I really don't remember if I loved the story or not as a kid, because I really feel like I saw it on TV when I was like 6 or 7 and like got obsessed immediately. And I don't really remember my thoughts back then. So I can't really tell you what I thought about the story as a kid. I know what I thought about it later on, but by then it had been like inside my soul for so long. So it's hard to say what I thought back then, but upon rewatching it recently, it was just like, man, this is a slog. And I just want to get through it.
Well, the worst lightsaber battle ever, yes, from a technical standpoint, it's the worst. But from an emotional or storyline standpoint, it's probably the most significant lightsaber fight in the whole series.
Yeah, we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that. I think there are at least 5 lightsaber fights I could say that have more emotional impact or value to me. At least
Okay.
5.
At least five. More than that one. Okay. Sure.
I really think more than 5. I think I could list, with the exception of like the lightsaber fights in the new trilogy, I feel like almost every other lightsaber fight. I mean, even in the original trilogy alone, the 2 other lightsaber fights between Luke and Darth Vader were far more emotionally impactful than that one with Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. Now, if you wanted to take the knowledge of the prequel trilogy into account, that lightsaber battle then does increase in emotional value for me. But even with that knowledge, I don't think it would beat a lot of the other lightsaber battles because it's just hilarious to watch. Only a master of evil, Darth. Like, I don't know. It's like lines like that. There's a lot of history that like makes it more impactful, but I don't know. I'm just very unimpressed with the whole movie, I guess. It it is a really interesting lightsaber fight because there's so much that they talk about during it, and you're like, what the fuck are they talking about? I don't have any idea. And you don't know. For 20 years later, you don't know what they're talking about. And then they do the prequel trilogy, and you're like, oh, now this makes sense.
Well, I would definitely say, like, Luke and Darth's lightsaber battle. Was that in the first one or the second one? Was that in New
Well,
Hope?
in the New Hope, the only lightsaber battle is the sad one where Obi-Wan
Okay.
and Darth Vader's lightsabers are like literally technically failing. You see the light like fading and like it gets really short, and it was just a technical glitch that they couldn't fix, I guess. Um,
So
so
their
uh,
first one is in or Empire Strikes Back then.
when he loses his hand, yeah. So
Okay.
I mean, that one way more impactful to me, way better technically, way better emotionally, and then you have the Return of the Jedi fight, which I think is even more so uh, compared to A New Hope. But that's just my opinion.
Okay, well, let's go to rank number six.
Are we both we okay, we're both on six then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, you're probably not going to be happy with this one, but whatever. Um, Revenge of the Sith, episode three. And
What?
I know you love this one so much because they fight in a volcano and
Oh, that's so much to that movie I love.
and what is it? Yoda flips around and fights Palpatine.
Yeah, and that again, right there, you just named two lightsaber fights I think they're the two best lightsaber fights in the franchise, bar
Well,
none.
well, I think the Anakin and the Obi-Wan one is one of the best ones, yes. But to me, the Yoda one was silly. Sorry.
Oh, see, I love that one because they well, you know what? I'm gonna pause. We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
I'll talk about why I like it later.
So Revenge of the Sith to me was the best of the prequels. Um and I like that one the most for sure. But it's kind of in the middle of my list just because I think again, the only thing I remember from that one is Anakin and Obi-Wan fighting in a volcano.
Wow,
Uh,
there's so many moments in that movie that are memorable. That's shocking to me.
it's just I again I probably only watched it twice, maybe,
Okay.
and to me a lot of the Anakin stuff is uh I need more power. It's just like kind of emo to me. I don't know, like uh, it's
That's
not.
an interesting take for the Revenge of the Sith because I
It's
feel like a lot of people don't like Anakin's performance in episode two, but a lot of them really like it in episode three.
I don't like either. I think
Interesting, interesting.
I just find that Darth Vader is this kind of like solemn character, right? He doesn't when you see Darth Vader, he's just like this like shadowy figure and he's just very solemn and deliberate, you know.
Yes, but that was like uh a choice that he made because of what happened when he loses Padme when she dies. He just doesn't care about anything anymore, so he shuts off his emotions, and then he basically goes full on with Palpatine. He's like, all right, well, I don't have anything to live for now, so now I'm basically your soldier, and that is what I love about it.
Well, and then at the end where he becomes Darth Vader and he like breaks free from the shackles like he's Frankenstein or something. They're
Best moment
just
of the movie.
it's just goofy.
I loved it. I
They're
love that part. That part
there's
gives me chills every time I see it.
it just
It's
looks
his last emotional outburst.
goofy to me, sorry.
It's great.
There's
It
just there's just
does
so
look a
many
little goofy, I guess,
they're like
but
going
he's
back.
learning to walk for the first time on like,
Okay.
he got his legs cut off, so he has like,
There's just so many directorial choices that could have shown that same thing in a different way.
I
Um,
suppose, but I mean, if you're talking about the way he like walks, it's because it's artificial legs.
I know, but it looks bad. It's the same thing with the criticism of Obi-Wan and Darth Vader's bad lightsaber fight. It just doesn't look good to me. It just looks silly.
Right.
Um, and I'm trying to think of what else happened in that movie. He killed some kids or something.
Oh
Um,
man, there's so much that happens in that movie, and if you don't remember it, it's fine because I'll tell
you'll
you everything in a little
you'll
bit.
you'll remind me later. Okay.
Yes, I will.
So, but again, it's not my. I don't hate the movie. It's just I don't love it, and it's
Right.
kind of in the middle for me. Almost the
Okay.
middle. It's
Right.
not. It's my number six. So
All right. So my number six, I I ranked these right before we got on here, and I struggled. I went 9 was Rise of Skywalker, 8 was Last Jedi, put 7 as A New Hope. And I really my number 6 is The Force Awakens.
Mm,
I couldn't tell where I wanted to put The Force Awakens or A New Hope. I kept switching them because essentially they're the same movie. Same story, same ending. I mean, The Force Awakens was A New Hope, copy pasted. The reason I put The Force Awakens above A New Hope is because I went to the theater super excited that Star Wars was back. I watched it, came out a little disappointed. I was like, man, that was just A New Hope. It was like better technically, obviously, in terms of technology. I mean, not like it's technically better.
yeah,
Um, and so it was, but it gave me so much hope for like, it gave me a new hope.
it gave you New Hope.
Yes, it gave me a lot of hope for the future. I was so excited for The Last Jedi. You have no idea. And it was all because The Force Awakens just had such a good start in terms of like, we're back, baby. Except we're just gonna plagiarize one of our own films, which I really hated that part. But you had like Han Solo was amazing in that movie, and then he dies, and that was like crazy. And then you had the ending with Rey and Luke, and you're like, oh, Luke's back, and he's going to like train her, and this is going to be awesome because it ends when she's holding the lightsaber out to him, and it like spins away, and it's gone. And I was so excited. I was like, oh, this is gonna be so cool. Little did we know they're gonna ruin it all. So you know, I think that's why I put The Force Awakens just higher, just by a fraction higher than A New Hope, because it was like the same story, and it was hard for me to choose which one I liked more. But I just think that New Hope is like aged really badly for me, so that's why I put it lower.
So, as far as like, this is kind of tangent, but do you ever go back and watch like really old movies and still like them? Like, even they're really old,
Um,
like a 1960s movie or 1970s movie.
okay, let's be honest here, Phil. Time to break the ice. I don't like movies that are old. My definition of an old movie is A New Hope, and that's from 1977. Uh, Things before that, I don't really want to watch. I get bored of really old movies. I really don't like them. So some of my real movies that I consider really old that I still enjoy, uh, Empire of the Sun, which is a 1988 movie.
Mm.
Love it, but that's not that old. I'm trying to think of other old movies that I like I mean, other than Star Wars, because
So, you,
oh, Indiana Jones, I was a big fan of those, but again, those are not like old. Those are from the 80s, I think.
so outside of the sci-fi or fantasy genre, I mean, just like classic movies, like The Godfather or something like that.
Okay, I did like The Godfather. But I took a film class in college, and we had to watch a lot of super popular classics. Trying to remember what they were. I think Casablanca was one.
Mm.
Uh, I can't remember the name of the movie. The one with Rosebud.
Oh, Citizen Kane.
Yeah, saw that. I fucking hated all these movies, by the way. I know that's like not great to say, but
Citizen Kane's fucking awesome though. That one scene, uh, when he destroys the room, it's fucking great.
okay, but like that's assuming you haven't fallen asleep yet, because that movie is godly boring. It's so boring. Uh, but I feel that way. Anything that you consider a classic, I probably think is like ridiculously boring, and that goes for books too. And it's just how I am. I don't usually read anything that's like was written before 1980. I don't watch anything that was like made before 1980. I just don't like old stuff.
So William Shakespeare,
I fucking hate Shakespeare, dude.
but it's not boring.
Oh, I 100% disagree. I think Shakespeare is some of the most boring writing I've ever read.
And Revenge of the Sith is is better than Shakespeare.
A
That's
hundred percent.
that's a
I
really
love,
hot
yeah.
take.
I don't care. Shakespeare, there's not anything about Shakespeare that's interesting.
Quote, uh John thinks Revenge of the Sith is better
Dude,
writing than Shakespeare.
yeah, 100%. I'm not even kidding. I would definitely say that, and I would stand by that, and I would mean it. I think that Shakespeare is trash. I think that Return of the Jedi is great, or not Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith. Sorry, I was reading Return of the Jedi. I meant Return of or Revenge of the Sith. I'm getting my movies confused now.
Well,
Uh,
we're going to skip the rest of this because I'm a English literature major, and there's this is going down a dark path. So I
this is
might
great
I might turn
because
into Darth Vader
you're,
during this
yeah,
episode.
yeah, I consider you part of the problem, you English major people, because you guys all like all this crap that I was made to read because all these English people thought it was amazing. And every time I just wanted to slap the English teacher. You think that Catcher in the Rye is good writing? You're an idiot. You think that Shakespeare is good? You're an idiot. Give me something that's interesting. But that's
Yoda flipping through the air and hitting throwing Palpatine across the room. That's interesting. Okay, let's go to the next.
they use the Force, dude.
Let's go to the next one. I think the next one is probably
Number 5, right?
5. I kind of waffled on this one because there's a couple of reasons why my top 4 I picked my top 4. And you probably won't like it, but whatever. We don't we disagree on Shakespeare, so who cares? So episode 6, Return of the Jedi, is my number 5.
Your
And
wait. Your number 5 is Return of the Jedi.
yeah.
My number 5 is Return of the Jedi.
Oh, okay.
We got one right.
Nice. Good good synergy there. So Return of the Jedi is like, I don't know. It's in the middle of my list because there's a lot of things I love about it. There's a lot of things I don't love about it. Um, and it's not just the Ewoks. The Ewoks, whatever. I know people hate on the Ewoks. I actually liked the Ewoks when I was a kid.
I also still like the Ewoks as an adult. I mean, I don't like them like them. Like I would have preferred maybe they didn't have them and they had some other like cool alien race, but I'm not opposed to like the cute race. I think when you're doing a world like Star Wars, there's going to be like a cute warrior type race, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just going to be something that you can't take seriously. And that's why I never had a problem with the Gungans either. Like you just have a whole bunch of different races, and you're gonna think some are awesome, and you're gonna think some are stupid, and you're gonna think, but I don't care. I love them all because it gives the the world a lot more like diversity. It's really cool, and I love that. Like probably if you walk up to a Star Wars fan and ask them what their favorite race is, it's gonna be totally different than yours.
Yeah, I mean, I can't even think of what my favorite Star Wars race would be if somebody asked me, but probably wouldn't be Ewoks. But Ewoks,
Right.
I like the Ewoks for what they are. I kind of like that they're fighting back against the super powerful empire with the big AT-ATs or whatever, and they're still like managing to like use crude traps and stuff to fight
Yeah.
back against them. So yeah, I mean, really, the movie is more about Luke and Darth Vader and the ending and everything. And it was a satisfying ending, I think. It was really the only way the series could end, I guess. Um, and then when you go back, and then when you look at all the other movies, how they're all kind of tied in. Uh, it's a good, George Lucas is obsessed with poetry. If you watch any interviews, he says it's got poetry. He loves this idea of like things are in cycles, or Darth Vader was originally a good person, and then he turned to the dark side, and then here he is, he's a good person again, kind of thing. Um but I think we talked about the Emperor a little bit in a previous episode where we are talking
Yeah, it
about
was.
antagonists.
Yeah, well, he was one of my favorite antagonists
uh
all time.
yeah, just certain things about him. It's like, why? It's like Darth Vader standing right there, and you're like, you're like, hey, why don't you be my new right hand man? Darth Vader's just standing right there looking at him like, what? What about me? What the fuck? So, and I love Jabba the Hutt. Jabba the Hutt's one of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars, just because he's this
Yeah,
gross, disgusting, like crime boss that's this huge slug. It's just like
yeah. I love.
sleazy, disgusting fucking character.
So when we were kids, my brother and my sister, we had the well, I
Yeah.
had the original trilogy,
I
and we
was,
would rewatch them. And this Return of the Jedi was actually our favorite as kids.
yeah. I was gonna say, I thought you were gonna say you had the toy, because I had the toy. I had the
What
Jabba
toy?
I had the Jabba the Hutt toy,
Oh, okay. I
and
had.
it had like a pit underneath it, and you could drop other Star Wars characters into it. It was
Oh,
like
it's
the
awesome.
it was
Yeah, I
like
never had that.
it was the best toy.
But yeah, it sounds like it. I had all like every single action figure almost, but I never had a Jabba the Hutt, unfortunately. I
But
just he was definitely one of the best parts, and still today, I want more of like. Doesn't have to be Jabba the Hutt, but if we could get more, they kind of touched on it with the Book of Boba Fett very briefly, and I'm not gonna spoil anything for you because you haven't seen it, but they do kind of touch on some stuff, and I just wish they would focus more on like the Hutts and the like criminal underworld stuff, and it would be such a good like TV show. And I've thought that since I was a kid, and even when I was a kid, there was the George Lucas was like, I think this was after or during the new trilogy was coming out. They were like filming for a live action TV show, and it was supposed to be about like the criminal underworld, I believe.
mm,
And then it never made it to like an actual show, which is insane because the amount of filming that they did and they had, it was like ridiculous amount of hours. And I think what happened was it just became too expensive and they tossed it. But it's like, oh my God, I'm pretty sure they had like 900 filmed hours or something. I can't remember. And that was like not of like acting or anything. I think it was just like scenery and stuff. Like I don't think they had actually cast anything. But man, that sucks. I was so excited for that and nothing.
well, I think I think Return of the Jedi also has some of the more interesting set pieces. Like they're in a lot of different locations, so I think it made it made the universe feel bigger in a way. Um, but I know some people criticize that it kind of bounces around too much, and you know, some people say the stuff that's on the forest planet indoor or whatever is not as interesting as the other stuff that's happening. But I don't know. I liked all of it when I was younger. I think if I watched it now, I would probably be like, I don't know. But
Yeah, that's why it's in the middle of my list, is because I have rewatched it as an adult and I'm just like, eh. But I feel that way about even worse about the New Hope. So,
hmm,
you know. You ready to move on to number four?
yeah. And you're gonna think this is a troll choice. You think you're gonna think I'm trolling you.
Yeah, I know what it is, I think.
But I have my reasons why I chose this one. And
This
I
is The
think
Last Jedi.
it is The Last Jedi.
Yeah, you're wrong. Like factually.
And just hear my opinion about it. I know you don't like it, but this is
The only reason I'm entertaining listening to this opinion is because we're on a podcast and I have
okay.
to.
So really I'm just gonna bring it down to this basically. I'm not gonna go into detail about anything. I like The Last Jedi because it tried something different. And
Uh,
even if it failed, even if
no.
it didn't work, even if it didn't resonate or sucked, it was a piece of shit, whatever. whatever whatever
No.
anyone
No.
wants to say about it.
No.
Uh I'll just leave it at that.
That's such a bad take because just because they did something new and you even sounds like you admit that it sucked and it didn't resonate.
No, I'm saying from your perspective it sucked. And
Okay. So you liked the stuff that they did in that trash movie.
I liked yeah, I liked several things. Um I liked some of the stuff with Ray and Kylo Ren more than I liked it in the other movies. Um,
Okay, so that's like the only thing that I probably agree with you on with this movie. Like it was interesting their dynamic. I don't like how ultimately he ended up becoming good. But that didn't happen in this movie. And their dynamic of like, you're bad, I'm good, but we also have the same kind of goal, so let's work together.
yeah,
I like that. I didn't
most
like some of the results of what happened because of that, like the quick Snoke killing and like we never really figured out the fuck Snoke was supposed to be. Like
I
I
think
just feel like that was a lot of wasted potential.
I think
But
as a whole movie, um, sure, there's a lot of stuff I didn't like or I thought was nonsensical or totally destroyed Star Wars forever or whatever. But the Kylo Ren Ray stuff was interesting to me. And I remember after watching the movie, I was really excited to see where they went with those two characters specifically. And those were the two main characters. I mean, um, I remember when Force Awakens came out, a lot of people were shitting on Kylo Ren and saying, "Oh, he's emo and he's not cool like Darth Vader and da 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 da." Da. But
I love that. Yeah,
that's what
I
I
love that too. It was
yeah,
amazing.
that's what I loved about Kylo Ren, that he was like an emotional wreck and he couldn't live up to Darth Vader. And he, when he failed something, he flipped out and broke shit and
I
was
love that. Yeah.
just a pissy little baby about stuff. And I love that because he had power. And
It
uh,
makes sense too. Like if you give like if you're in charge and you're like younger and
yeah,
like something doesn't go your way and you're like evil, like we've seen it so many times. Think about Game of Thrones and Joffrey. Like you're just going to be like I mean, you're not always going to be, but like often you can just devolve into this like selfish, emotional like brat. That's like what happened to him.
yeah. So I think the reason that I ranked some of these movies higher was because I did really like the Kylo Ren character originally, and um, uh, Adam Driver is brilliant in this role, and he's like a great actor in general. But like he was like the perfect choice for this role, I think, because he even kind of looks like a combination of Leia and Han Solo in a way.
Right.
Uh, so I think you know, Luke drinking the milk and throwing the lightsaber and some of that kind of shit, like sure, whatever.
Yeah, I hated all that shit. It was all so stupid.
Um, I'm looking at it more as like from the perspective of potential that it had.
But you know where the potential went,
Yeah, it went
and
to
you're still rating it this high.
my number not number 8 on the list. Uh, I think just looking at it as a movie by itself, it just ranks a lot higher than some of the others as far as like, and it could be just familiarity
Yeah.
and how I felt when I left the theater. I'm looking at it not just from a perspective of I've rewatched the movie several
Wait,
times or whatever.
you walked out of theater and you were like not fuming?
No, I was more like there were certain things I was like kind of but I wasn't as pissed off about that movie as most people were.
Oh my God, that's so funny because I watched it with my family. My brother and I think my mom and my sister were there too. And we watched it at a theater in a mall. And I remember this very distinctly. We finished the movie, and after we watched the movie, we were going to like a store or something. And we went into, I think it was like FYE, the game store, like the video game store. And we went in there, and my brother and I just could not stop talking about how shocked and appalled we were at how stupid that movie was. And, like, we just kept going through all the stuff that irritated us. But the thing that I have to just counter all your points about why you liked it as much as you do is the major point that I thought was why, like, one of the biggest things that I just can never get over with that movie about why I hate it so much was Leia blowing up into space, opening her eyes,
Oh yeah,
and
oh
then
yeah,
using the force to get back into a ship. I wanted to kill myself. It was so stupid.
oh yeah. I totally forgot about that.
I fucking hated that. That scene haunts me to this day, as you can tell. I just really I can't get past that. I can maybe forgive a lot of the other stuff as like, yeah, trying something new and fucking it up. But that, no. I can't with that one.
Well, I think the problem with Last Jedi was if, well, this is the problem with the sequel trilogy. Anyway, is that they gave J.J. Abrams the first one, and then they gave Rian Johnson the second one. Just completely different director, and basically said, do whatever you want with
Yep, they didn't have a single plan. It was
it.
so stupid.
And Rian Johnson is like he's done some interesting movies before, so I was actually kind of excited what he was going to do because he's not a typical Star Wars director. I think he he's not experimental, but he's kind of like some of the stuff he does is not typical what you would do. So I was pretty excited when they picked him because I was just like, oh, cool. I wonder what he would do with this. Because he did the movie Looper, which is probably one of my favorite like time travel type movies. And yeah, I understand that it's universally hated and blah 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 blah, but just certain parts of it, like in a vacuum, there's certain parts I really loved, but as an overall movie, uh, probably shouldn't be my number 4, but it is.
Yeah, I would think not, but that's why we're doing this. This is because we have very different opinions. Because my number four is going to be a shock to probably everyone, and it's Empire Strikes Back. It's not in my top three. Yes, you all heard that right. Empire Strikes Back. And
Well, let's look back. You said Shakespeare's trash. So,
well, yeah, factually it is. And so
so
if
continue.
um yeah, I don't know. I mean, Empire Strikes Back is my favorite of the original trilogy. As an adult, I will say I didn't rewatch it that much as a kid, or at least the whole film, because of two things. The first is that the Yoda, like the Dagobah scene or scenes, are kind
Mm.
of boring. and especially as a kid, they were really boring. I still think they're boring as an adult, but they're not enough to make me stop watching the movie. And then secondly was as a kid, and this might be a little bit embarrassing to admit, and that's okay. The whole Darth Vader scene in the end, the lightsaber fight that we were talking about earlier, always freaked me out. The whole like, because it had some horror elements to it. It'd scare you because Darth Vader would just like appear and start attacking Luke, and it was like scary. And then when his arm got cut off, it always like that always bothered me when I was younger. So, but as an adult, that's not, bothering me. And the darker tone of that movie is so much better than A New Hope. And Lando is fantastic. Uh, the whole like Han Solo, Boba Fett, Carbonite, I love you, I know. I just I loved it all. It's great. And so that's why it's my favorite of the original trilogy. And yeah, I don't know, Cloud City. I really liked Cloud City a lot. I wish we saw more of it there.
Well, there's just certain settings in Star Wars that you would think they could do more with. It's just they were so
I know.
interesting when they appeared, and then
Tatooine, Tatooine, Tatooine.
yeah, yeah, and then
Ships
we
like the
yeah
bell.
we get Desert Planet over and over again. Um. Okay, well, I'll get into that my feelings about that later because it's
Hell yeah.
a little bit higher on my list. Um. All
My
right.
number, you did number four, right?
Yeah. So number three is The Force Awakens.
Okay. I'm not
And
upset by that.
and a lot of this has to do with when I watched it, I was super excited. Yeah, it was basically the New Hope, but it was like a better version of the New Hope, and it had way cooler effects. It had some potentially cool new characters like Finn. You talked about earlier. I was really excited to see like, oh, what are they going
Yeah.
to do with this former stormtrooper? And you kind of got
Nothing.
it. You kind of got an insight into the stormtroopers a little bit, which you never really get in any of the other movies, like how they're treated or how they're, they make bonds with each other or whatever.
It's shocking that they started with that like storyline. And then I don't know after Force Awakens, I don't know if they ever mentioned that he was like a former stormtrooper again. Like, yeah, I just don't think it's like mentioned or talked about or thought about.
Yeah, I think you're right. um,
I mean, I think that he has one scene with like Captain Phasma at some point in The Last Jedi, maybe, where like she mentions it, but like it didn't really amount to anything. And it's just weird because that was such a interesting part of The Force Awakens, I think, was that whole story.
well, I remember when I saw the trailer for Force Awakens, and I'm not like a super huge Star Wars fan. I like Star Wars a lot. I've watched all the movies, obviously. I watch a lot of the stuff. I don't live or die by it or anything. But when I saw the Force Awakens trailer, I was genuinely like, "Oh wow, this is really looks really cool." And then when I saw the movie, I left the movie really happy. I remember. Um,
Yeah,
so
I,
that's how I look at the movie. Like, how did it make me feel after? Did it stick with me? And I think that movie's stuck with me in a positive way, even though what came after it was not what we wanted, obviously. But
right.
um, I think a lot of stuff that happened in that movie, setting up a new villain. Um, I think the Snoke thing, yeah, obviously could have been a cooler thing. Um,
Yeah, he started off so interesting.
and Kylo Ren started off really interesting to me. Um, is that the movie he kills Han Solo?
Yeah.
Yeah, that moment's a huge moment. Um, so yeah, just so much. Like if you're gonna do a Star Wars Skywalker movie, I thought this was a good introduction to a
Yeah,
new group of characters.
I think The Force Awakens was like an easy
It was like a
7 out of 10, maybe. Like really good, not amazing, but
yeah.
like you know that they were playing it safe because they needed to make money and like they needed to like reinvigorate the fan base, and they did all of that, and then they fucked it up.
Well, let's think about something for a moment. What's like food? Like, what's some food you really hate, for example?
Food I really hate.
Yeah. Well, let's talk. Let's say like Italian food. Like, what Italian food do you really hate?
Okay, this is kind of a surprising thing, but I absolutely hate tomatoes, like just in general, and I feel like that is a really weird thing to say as an Italian.
Okay, so for example, uh, if I gave you like a salad with a bunch of tomatoes in it, how would you feel?
Well, I hate salad, so I would feel the same probably, but let's
Okay.
assume that I like salad. If you put tomatoes in it, I probably wouldn't eat it because raw tomatoes, I'm assuming they're sliced unless you use the little ones. And if you don't use the little ones, then there's like tomato juice everywhere and seeds. Yeah, I'm not eating that. It's gross.
Okay. All right. So let's say before that, what's something that you love to eat? Like if I your favorite thing.
I don't know. I like if we're talking Italian food, I mean,
Like
I love things like pizza. I love things with like red sauce. I'm not a big fan of spaghetti, but like if there's chunks of tomatoes on the pizza sauce or in the pizza sauce rather, or it's
mm,
in like the sauce, I really don't like that. I don't like the chunks.
okay. All right.
I have
So
to fish around them.
this is a good maybe this is a good analogy. Some people hate my analogies, but um so I give you pizza. Pizza is The Force Awakens. And then I say, that was pretty good, right? And you're like, yeah, that's pretty good. I like that. It wasn't great, but I mean, it was pretty good. And then I say, okay, well, after this, I'm going to give you a salad with a bunch of tomatoes in it since you like tomatoes. That's the Last Jedi. It's like
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you what I think maybe you want, but it's not what you expected. So to me, it's like The Force Awakens was a predictable layup kind of movie. Like, okay, here we go. All right, we made it. And then the Last
Yep.
Jedi's like, why don't you try this? And everybody's like, what the fuck? No, I want more
Yeah.
pizza.
Yeah, it was awful. But apparently I hate it far more than you do. And that's, that's okay. Uh, The Force Awakens was your what, number three?
Yeah.
All right.
What's your number
I'll say
three?
my number three is the Phantom Menace.
Okay.
Yep. And a lot of it is because of the reasons that you listed for The Force Awakens. I was a kid, saw that trailer. It blew me away. The trailer was just amazing.
The trailer was awesome. Yeah.
I went and saw it in theaters. I loved it. A lot of people don't like a lot of some of the stuff like midi-chlorians. I get it, but like in my opinion, it makes sense that when there's that many more Jedi, they have a lot more information on the stuff. They understand the Force more. I love that movie because it opened it up. You see all these different Jedi. I loved it. You had the Jedi Council. You had Coruscant. It was fantastic. The it was a little slow. The movie was a bit slower. You had the politics, which as a kid, not a big fan of. Naboo was great, but Tatooine again, it was cool to see again. But my God, that segment where they're getting Anakin is dragged out. Pod race was fun and cool, but it was a bit slow. And upon a rewatch, it's even slower than I remembered. But the reason it's so high on my list is because it was like I saw the original trilogy so much, and then I saw the Phantom Menace. And as a kid, I think the storyline maybe resonated with me better than older people maybe because it was like new and just my God, the special effects at the time were fucking amazing. And it just took my breath away and it just opened Star Wars up to like, the original trilogy is really like focused story on like Luke, I feel like. There's not as much expansion. I feel like the Phantom Menace really opens things up. You see like the Queen, you see like Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and like the Jedi Council stuff. You see, I don't know, all this other stuff. Whereas in the original trilogy, it's just like, all right, this is Luke's story. And it really focuses on that. I just really like how it like expanded everything, and it kind of started my favorite trilogy, which was the prequels, which is a huge hot take. I know that, but I don't know. Just really liked that movie. Darth Maul was amazing, and Mace Windu was fantastic. Samuel L. Jackson killed it. Uh, but I do get the criticisms. I get it. Some of the Gungan stuff was a little annoying. Anakin was like a little annoying, but overall, I really liked it.
Yeah. What did I rank it? No, I ranked it 7.
I think. Oh, was it seven? For some reason, I was thinking it was eight, but no.
Yeah, Rise of Skywalker was 8.
Okay.
Yeah, it's almost like I ranked my list based on my disappointment level. I think not so much the story or the characters or whatever, just like how I felt after the movie and like how I still feel now. Um,
Yeah, I sort of did the same.
yeah,
It's just we were disappointed by different things, I think.
yeah. And I think some of it has to just do with like time also. That moment in time or whatever. The first time I watched Phantom Menace, I was just like, it was again one of those movies. I left the theater and I was like, that was okay, yeah.
Right.
And then later, after I really thought about it, I was like, I really didn't like that movie.
Okay, so let me clarify something because if that's I wonder if that's not coming off here because I haven't mentioned it. So I've been like a lifelong Star Wars like fanatic for a very long time. I've kind of fallen out of it as like a more like adult person. But as a kid, I watched this shit so much. I bought the Star Wars like action figures, which had these little blurbs on the back. It kind of gave you additional information, or it would give you the name of a random alien that like you didn't know in the movies. And so I had all this extra information. I had like
did
some
you
of the
did you have
encyclopedia stuff.
did you have Kid Fisto?
Kit Fisto? Of course I did. I also read a lot of stuff online. So like I knew a lot of extra lore. And so I really understood a lot of like why things happened the way they did, like what happened behind the scenes of a lot of stuff. And I think that if you don't have a lot of this background lore, the prequels might not land as good. Like I saw them and I liked them. I even loved some of them a lot more than probably a lot of people did on their first watch. But when you really start to get into the understanding more of like the Jedi Temple, the Jedi Code, some of what like Palpatine was doing, that you don't really see a lot of this stuff. It just lands more like it just resonates better, I think. Uh,
Well, that's kind of like if you're reading a novel series and somebody's like, well, I didn't really like this character and blah blah blah, and then somebody's like, well, you didn't read the short story collection about the character. If you read the short story collection, then you would have learned all this stuff about the character. And it's like
yeah,
people don't do that. They
I,
they
I, I,
watch the movie
I
and that's
know,
it.
I know, and that's fair. I'm just saying that I have like an extended understanding of a lot of this stuff, and that I think is why I like it more. Maybe.
I see.
I don't know. It's kind of like Lost. I didn't like the ending of that show, but then upon watching some videos on YouTube and hearing some interviews and theories, I kind of like figured it out better, and I was like, "Oh, now I don't hate this."
Do you find that like I watched this famous YouTube series by Red Letter Media. They're like a famous review group on YouTube, and they did a series about the prequel that just like absolutely dismantled the prequels, and it's so hilarious for me. And then when I watched that, I wondered if that has affected my um because there's like almost nothing positive about the prequels in these reviews, but they're very well done. The
I've
way that
seen like things like that before.
Yeah, so I think so. I wonder if sometimes certain, in my case, I don't think that has affected my opinion of it, but like if you're exposed to like people, they're like prequels are trash, prequels are trash, prequels are trash, then you're going to maybe lean more in that direction. Whereas, yeah, some people are less influenced by that kind of stuff. Some people are.
I think I am sort of because I came out of the sequel trilogy hating like the last two movies, and then I saw like what you just mentioned about the prequel trilogies. I
Yeah,
saw like videos about that shit that like
about
completely tore them apart and how
about
bad they were.
about the sequels.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And like I already hated them, but when I saw that, oh my god, it just made me hate them so much more. But you have to remember when the prequel trilogy came out, at least where I lived, there wasn't really internet in homes. It was at school, but you weren't going on the internet at school at this time to do anything other than like homework.
Yeah.
There weren't like games that anyone was playing online there. At least not where I went to school really. And internet at home didn't exist because I lived in a place that like was in kind of a remote area, mountainous. It was hard to get internet. So it was kind of like I had dial up and I used that for homework and that was it because it took the phone line. So
Mm.
couldn't just be on it all day playing a game. So I didn't get exposed to a lot of the hatred of the prequel trilogy, I don't think, because mostly the people around me that saw it loved it because it was like that age group, I guess, that you know we liked it for the most part.
Yeah. So that was number
Three, right?
three. All
So
right.
we're on to number two.
So I actually switched these. To be honest, I think they're the same for me. I'm just gonna say number one and number two. They could
Yeah.
it depends on what my mood is
Okay.
at any given time. But Empire Strikes Back and A New Hope, those are my two favorites.
Oh wow.
Uh
Okay.
it really depends on my mood. Like I said, New Hope is always my starting point, like if I introduce somebody to it, because that's the first movie I
Oh, me
watch.
too. Yeah, we agree there. I would not. Actually, that actually was an interesting thing. My brother was going to what was rewatching them with his fiance, and he was like, "I don't want to watch the original trilogy because they're boring, and I know she's not going to like them." And I was like, "But you have to start there." He's like, "Not really." I was like, "No, you have to start there. Like that's just not negotiable." First of all, if you start with the prequel trilogy and then you get to A New Hope, the technology decreases in such a drastic way that it's going to be hard to push yourself through them from that visual standpoint. And she's really younger, so like that matters more. And I was like, just get her through the first movie. I know the first movie is going to be a huge struggle for her, and then she'll like it more. And then once she gets into the prequel trilogy, she'll be fine. And that's exactly what happened. She hated A New Hope beyond everything, and I knew she would. And she wouldn't watch Empire Strikes Back for the longest time. And as soon as she did, then she started to like it. And once she got into the prequel trilogy, she really liked it. But I mean, starting this original trilogy now, it's like what, 40 years old now, almost,
Yeah.
right? Like you can't really blame someone who's like, it's not that good. It's like, yeah, I get that, but I don't think Star Wars works. The story, I don't think it works if you don't start at A New Hope. It just makes me cringe because it's like it's written this way, not on purpose, because it definitely wasn't done on purpose, but it was the order that it was like written because at first A New Hope was not planned to be like number 4, right? They started it, and that was just the first movie.
Yeah.
It was later that it was fixed to that. But yeah, I just think that if you watch the prequels first, you lose the context of what like the original trilogy is. And I feel like it also kind of spoils some of the stuff. Like in the original trilogy, the nice part is there's like this mystery going on, and then you see the mystery later of like what happened. I just think watching it backwards would, I guess I wouldn't ruin it, but it just makes me cringe in so many ways because it's not the order.
So yeah, I think New Hope and Empire Strikes Back are kind of like cheese and wine. They kind of go well together, I guess, to me. You just if you watch A New Hope and then you watch Empire Strikes Back, like almost directly after that, has a good feeling to it to me. Like, um, and then yeah, I mean, to be honest, I get some events mixed up in those two movies, like what happened in this movie and what happened in that movie. I
Ah,
know, I know. Again, I haven't watched either one of them in a while, but um, yeah, like I said earlier, I couldn't remember if Luke fought fought Darth Vader in the first movie or the second one. Um, so, but these are the movies like I love to watch the most out of the Star Wars series. So, like
right.
I could watch these two movies over and over again. And New Hope is probably more of a nostalgia thing, maybe not a quality thing, because
Right.
like you said, there are parts of it that are kind of dry or whatever, or
It's a
not it.
very, very slow movie, but I can only assume a lot of that is budgetary. Like they had no established like it was the first new part of it was like the taking a leap of faith is what that movie was. So I'm pretty sure that a lot of what they might have wanted to do, they couldn't. And that's one reason why Darth Vader's on the screen so little in that movie is because it was just I think it was partly planned to be like a menacing character, but I think it might have also been a budgetary thing.
Well,
Quite sure.
I'm a big horror movie fan, and I almost like less Darth Vader on the screen in general because when he appears, it's impactful and it's scary, and it's like, oh shit.
Right.
If he's just there all the time doing stuff, it's like not that exciting to me when he appears. It's kind of like a boss in a video game. Like you're fighting like these people, and then this boss that you keep hearing about. Oh, it's for example, Sephiroth or something. When you finally get to fight Sephiroth, you're like, oh shit, I finally get to fight this guy.
Right.
It's kind of like that. Like so, like Darth Vader when he finally fights Luke, it's like, oh shit, here we go. Like he's gonna get fucked up. And he
Right.
does. He gets fucked up.
Yeah.
Literally fucked up. He gets his hand cut off.
So I kind of expected your number one and two to be those, uh, just based on what I know about what you like.
Yeah.
And I don't hate that. I think if you're a fan of the original trilogy, that makes sense.
These are typically what people like if they're mostly fans of the original trilogy, which I am.
Right.
of those of the trilogies, this is the one I like the most, and I have the most connection to as a fan. Um, and I think it just has to do with probably my exposure to that when I was a kid, and then as I got older, I didn't have much interest in Star Wars beyond the original trilogy, and I just watched the other stuff because it was Star Wars. I was like, okay, it's sci-fi. I like Star Wars.
Yeah, it's
Let's,
actually really interesting because I feel like we probably grew up the same way with Star Wars.
yeah.
Because I watched the first movie on TV with my dad like when I was 6 or 7, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. And it was like that Christmas, I think, was like a Star Wars Christmas. I got all the main character action figures. I got the box set of the movies on VHS and fucking love those. Rewatched them so much. So I really loved it just from the original trilogy. But that then when the prequel trilogy came, I just loved it even so much more. And it might have just been the age. I don't know. Maybe I just liked the story
I
and,
think
other people didn't.
I think I just realized something. Attack of the Clones is your number two movie.
Attack of the Clones is my number two movie.
What the fuck?
Why is it my number two movie?
Yeah,
You
why?
ask.
Why?
All
Please
right.
explain.
I didn't know where to put Attack of the Clones. When I was doing my ratings, is it my second favorite Star Wars movie of the trilogies? I don't know. It feels wrong to say that. Like, but I was thinking about it and I was like, well, I like Attack of the Clones more than any of the sequel trilogy. And then I was like, do I like Attack of the Clones more than all of the original trilogy? Yeah, I think I do. I recently rewatched it like a year or two ago, and I was dreading rewatching that movie. I was excited to watch The Phantom Menace. I was excited to watch Revenge of the Sith. Was not excited for Attack of the Clones. And during that prequel rewatch, I remember thinking, wow, The Phantom Menace is not as good as I remember it being. And wow, Attack of the Clones is way better than I remember it being. And
Mm.
so that really surprised me. Uh, so yeah, I put it on number two on my list. Don't know how definitive that actually is, but it's where I put it for the purposes of this podcast. I don't feel super strong about that choice, but I couldn't really think of one that I'd switch it out with. So just kind of fell in number two slot by default. I know that sounds weird because it's my second favorite, and it's like weird to say that, but I don't know. Attack of the Clones was it had a lot of cool action scenes. I think I that's the one I don't like with the lightsaber fight. It had Count Dooku and Yoda flipping all over the place, and I hated that. I really thought that was cheesy and stupid. I thought that Yoda in the Revenge of the Sith movie was a lot better. But in Attack of the Clones, it was awful.
Mm.
However, Attack of the Clones has maybe what a lot of people say is one of the worst performances of all time, which is Hayden Christensen as Anakin. But I love Anakin. I love Hayden Christensen as Anakin. I think he played the character spectacularly for what he was supposed to do.
It's directing. I think it's not him. I think
I
it's
don't
the
know.
way he was directed. Because I mean, Natalie Portman's a great actress, also,
I love her in that movie specifically too.
and
I just
she has some questionable stuff sometimes.
well, the dialogue is one thing that people, and I'm not going to defend the dialogue. There are some funny lines, and that's probably one of the weaker parts. But man, there's just some really good storyline stuff. You get the love blooming storyline in that, and looking back, I was like not excited about that. But upon the rewatch, I was like, wow, this is actually interesting, and I like this. You have the Obi-Wan and Anakin relationship forming, and like that, I thought was really good. And then I do have some criticisms of that movie, but like overall, when I rewatched it, I was surprised that I liked it as much as I did. You had the cloning facility. Not necessarily the most interesting part was Camino, that planet,
Oh, with the
but
long neck people.
yeah, it wasn't the most interesting, but it was super interesting knowing how all of that happened. You know, the clone troopers, how they were made, and then finding out that like it was Palpatine that was it Palpatine or was it actually I think it was Count Dooku. I don't remember, it's been a little while, but they are the one that put in the order to like start the facility and basically it was to create this private army. I don't know, it's just a very
So
interesting thing.
I think I figured out what our major philosophical difference is about some of these things. I think you like to know everything, and I like to know very little. And I think this
Yes,
is an approach to to everything we like and dislike. So
that's true.
I think the things that I like that are kind of I've talked about and you're like, "Oh, that sucks," or "I don't like that." It's stuff that doesn't explain everything and kind of lets me figure it out or something. Whereas you like to know more and more and more about something.
It's true.
Whereas I don't care where the fucking clones came from. I
Yeah, I
just
think we
don't
were
care.
talking about hard and soft magic systems, and I
Yeah,
love
yeah, yeah.
hard magic, and you like soft magic, and I just don't like soft magic because you don't have like the information.
Well, I don't. Did I say I like soft magic? I don't remember saying I like
I
soft
thought
magic.
I think you said I don't remember exactly what you said, but I think you were at least if you didn't like it, you were a lot more tolerant of it than I am. I just really dislike it.
Yeah, I think I'm more tolerant of just like not knowing some stuff. Like I don't have to have
Right.
everything
Yeah, I
laid
don't like
out.
that so much.
So like the midichlorian thing, which I think the reason people hated that was because the Force originally was this mysterious, like nobody knew what it was, and that's what made it cool to a lot of people. And then when you
Uh,
say, "Oh, it comes
yeah.
from these whatever," that
See,
ruined the mystique of it. I think it's a mystique thing.
yeah,
That
I think that's actually really cool because it shows like the different time periods. So you have like, you know, back in the day, maybe the Force is more of a science kind of thing, and like they researched it, they used it in different ways, they understood it a lot more, and I thought that's really interesting. And then in the original trilogy, all that knowledge is gone because all those people died, and now it is kind of like this magic that like no one really understands, and that's like super interesting still. And then in the Mandalorian, you have like people have never even heard of it. Like, what are you talking about? And like that's really cool too. I love all the different eras and ways that like the Force is in Star Wars, I guess. I can't form the words correctly, but like I think you know what I mean, right? Like on
yeah,
the Outer Rim, maybe people have never even heard of the Force, and then like the closer you get to like Coruscant, where the Jedi Temple is and stuff, like people understand it or know it. And I don't know. It's I really like that. Anyway, number one movie, Revenge of the Sith.
mm,
I loved it, and it's really funny because I went to the movie theater to watch Revenge of the Sith. First half hour. Okay, so we were dropped off by my dad, and I'm sitting there with my brother. And if I had driven there myself, I don't think I was old enough yet at the time, or if I was, I didn't have my license at the time. Regardless, if I had driven there, I think I would have walked out. I was that pissed off. First half hour of that movie, I still maintain, is some of the worst Star Wars I've ever seen in my entire life.
oh, the
It starts in space.
space stuff. Yeah,
It's not climactic. It's not interesting. It's really cringy. There's a lot of stupid dialogue, no music. It's just weird. Then you have that whole scene where they like get on Count Dooku's ship. They go through. It's again really cheesy, really stupid. They finally get like subdue Count Dooku, and I'm like, oh god, this is so corny. And then they cut his head off, and I was like, oh, okay, things just got real. Then they finish that, and they like return to Coruscant, And all that cheesy shit, in my opinion, never returns. It goes away, it's gone. The rest of that movie, I think, is like a 10 out of 10. And I just absolutely love seeing Palpatine manipulate Anakin. I love seeing Anakin also not necessarily being manipulated and having rational thoughts. Like, Jedi Code is very hypocritical, and I don't like it. I really love Order 66. It's one of my favorite scenes of any movie ever. And I actually remember watching Order 66 in the theater. And my favorite Jedi, Plo Koon, dies. And I remember yelling, like, no. I
Not
didn't want.
Plo Koon.
Yes.
Who the fuck is Plo Koon?
Plo Koon is the guy with like the mask on his face. Um, yeah, I loved him. He was great. He's such a cool looking race.
Okay, I'll have to look it.
Um,
I'll have to Google him later.
it's PLO and then space KOON.
Of course,
Loves him.
of course it is.
Yeah, I know. So I liked him a lot. He was cool. Uh, just there were so many moments in that just fucking got to me emotionally. Like even today, as an adult, sometimes I'll just randomly turn on YouTube or Disney Plus, whatever I have at the time, and I'll find the last like 40 minutes of the movie or whatever. Right when the ship lands on Mustafar, where Anakin is, and Padme runs off the ship and starts trying to convince Anakin what the hell's going on, basically, and then Obi-Wan shows up and the fight starts. And I'll watch from right then until right when, like, I don't know, basically the end of the movie. And there's just so many moments in that movie that just I think are amazing. You have like the fight between Anakin and Obi-Wan, which is the best lightsaber fight that's ever happened in my opinion. It's long, it's so like much better in terms of the choreography and like the music is amazing. The words that they are saying are like super powerful to me anyway, because it's like, oh my god, like this the whole relationship that had been built in the last two movies between Anakin and Obi-Wan and Anakin and the Jedi. And then you also have Yoda and Palpatine. And my favorite scene, I think my favorite scene of any movie ever is when Yoda and Palpatine are fighting with their lightsabers in the middle of the Senate. And you have it, the center is like raising and it zooms out and you just see these two small figures fighting and you see the whole empty Senate. Because to me, that means so many things. You have like good versus evil fighting right there. You have like uh Jedi versus Sith. You have democracy versus the Empire basically. And there's just a lot of like hidden meaning behind that scene, I always thought. And then after that you have Padme dying, which is like is coming. But shit, that's sad. The reasoning might not land in the movie. I always was like, what the fuck? She lost the will to live. But reading stuff outside of the movie, I've come up with my own. I don't know if this was the intended reason, but it's the reason I always think of that makes the most sense. And it's that Anakin or Darth Vader or whatever accidentally like killed her with the Force, basically. Um, and I always think that's like a really cool thing to think of. That it was like, I mean, it kind of makes sense, I think, but that's how I always look at it. Is like he kind of like drained her, basically.
Mm.
Um, and then you have Anakin into Darth Vader, and I know that you hated the scene, but that was another one of my like favorite scenes of all time. It's clunky, you're right, but I think it's supposed to be clunky. He's not walked before. It's his first time like getting used to the suit.
Ag- Again, do we need to show him walking?
I think the point was to show him walking because it was like, look, he's this is not Darth Vader yet. But then he like takes that the best moment is when he takes that first breath, I think. And then the first line comes out of his helmet and you're like, ooh,
And he
this is
says,
like Darth Vader.
"Where is Padme?"
Yeah, and it's great. And then Palpatine has that line that
No.
yeah, but Palpatine has that line that like kind of reaffirms that he killed him with the Force, you know. He says like, it seems that in your anger you killed her. And he like, yeah, he does the no, and you just, oh, then you know. And I love that moment because then you know the original trilogy is coming, and he's this, you know, this worst dude ever. And it's all because of this. So for me, the Revenge of the Sith has like a lot of meaning, and I loved it because I really liked the original trilogy, but I thought Revenge of the Sith gave the original trilogy so much more for me. Obviously, for you, that's not the case.
No, for me, it was just like I don't know. It's like finding out Santa Claus is your parents. Like Darth Vader's this cool, mysterious figure, and it's just like, oh, it's this guy that did all this stuff. And it's like, I guess that's cool. Didn't really need to know that, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing that we didn't have to know it, but there's so much stuff that came from the prequel trilogy that I loved. Like I said, the expansion of the world, like, the Jedi Council was just so cool. I loved it. I wish we saw more of like that. You know, I'd really love a trilogy or a TV show that focused on just like they did this with the animated show, which is maybe a hot take here, hot garbage. I hated that show.
I've
But they
never
did it with that show.
I've never seen any of those.
It's not worth it. But basically it focuses on like Anakin and Obi-Wan and the new character Ahsoka, and like they go to the Jedi Temple. Basically every episode is kind of its own thing. There's a few that are like linked, but mostly it's like an anthology. So like it has kind of a running storyline, but it's not really that strong for a lot of the show anyway. And they go to the Jedi Temple to kind of get a mission. They go, they do the mission. They kind of come back. It's kind of almost like RPG. You go to your main base, you get a mission, you go out, you do it, you come back, you get your experience points. Like if they made like a live action like show about like a class that like starts as younglings in the Jedi Temple, and at that point you have the danger of you're learning, so you might have the dark side, so you could have some like rivalries there. You could have some people that like turn to the dark side. I don't know, there's a bunch of like expanded universe stuff on that, like books and stuff. I was never a big fan of the books, but I always like the idea of like more like learning more about that stuff, or more Coruscant would be nice. So I
More
don't know.
more croissants would be nice also.
If you like croissants, I suppose. I'm not a fan.
Well, I think we've gone through our list and there's been some hottest of hot takes here. So, in conclusion, that wraps up our episode about Star Wars, the 9 main Skywalker saga movies. And we hope you enjoyed this almost 2 hour long descent into madness that we have just brought you along with us on. John, do you have any final thing you want to say?
I thought it was really interesting to get two very different opinions on our rankings, but I'm very excited to talk about the other Star Wars media, which we will do in the future.
Yeah, so until next time, please check out John's book, Trials of Ashmount. You can get it on the digital places as usual. And if you want to get extra content, you can go to negative-hp.com. I promise I'm gonna put some other shit on there eventually. And uh, and if you're a fan of Star Wars, please let us know how much you disagree with us. We're happy to discuss. Until next time, may the force
Be with
uh,
you always.
shit on you. The end.